Okay, so to introduce arrays, I'm just going to write some test code right here. So an array is just going to be a collection of bytes essentially, and so we can think of this as if a variable is a single value, right? So char c is just going to be a byte. Then an array is going to be a collection of those variables bundled together. And then we just refer to them as one name, right? And then we access them by saying, like, give me the first one, give me the second one, give me the third one, etc. So we can look at this with numbers right now. So let's just say I have a sequence of numbers, right? So what I'm saying is, hey, these are numbers. They're integers. I'm going to call them numbers. And then these brackets right here and this 10 is saying I have 10 of them, right? So if we remember, a single int is 4 bytes, right? So this is going to be 10 times 4 bytes. So this is going to be a total of 40 bytes. And if I want to go ahead and say, oops, what did I do there? I did something terrible. I'm just going to go ahead and reload that file. So we have our numbers. I'm going to say, hey, the first number equals 1. The second number equals 2. The third number equals 4, etc., right? And, I could do that for all of the numbers if I wanted to. So you'll notice that this, when I'm setting the first one, I'm typing a 0. And when I'm saying the second one, I'm doing 1. And when I'm saying the second one, or the third one, I'm doing 2, right? You can see it gets kind of confusing. I swear you'll get used to it. So what that really is the way we access a value in the array is by saying index, right? So we do angle brackets index, right? And what that gets converted to is that gets us the bytes starting at index times size of element, right? So we can go ahead and think about it this way, because this is what's going on, right? So we have, we can simplify this. Let's just say that we have 3 numbers, right? So that's going to be 12 bytes, because each integer is 4 bytes, right? So that's going to be that the first 4 bytes, so this is going to be byte 0, byte 1, byte 2, byte 3, is going to be the first number. Then we have the second number at byte 4. Sorry. Byte 5, byte 6, byte 7. That's going to be the second number. Then we have byte 8, byte 9, byte 10, byte 11. And that is going to be the third number, right? So when I'm saying get me an nth number, get me a number at a certain address, if I want the very first number, I'm going to say 0, because and the size of element here is 4, right? Because I'm going to want to get the bytes starting at the very beginning, right? Which in this case, it's just going to be 0 times 4, which will of course be 0. So that's going to get me the bytes starting at byte 0, right? If I want the second number, though, I want the bytes starting at byte 4. Because, the first 4 bytes are the first number, and the second number is going to be the next 4 bytes. So I'm going to say, give me the bytes starting at index, which is 1, times the size of the element, which in this case is 4. So I'm going to get the bytes starting at 4. And when you do the same thing, when I want the third number, I'm going to want the bytes that are starting at 8, right? And, so I'm going to say 2 times 4. Give me those bytes. So just be aware of the fact that when we access these things, we're going to want to access them starting at 0, and we're going to want to stop before this, right? Because just because there's 3 things doesn't mean there is anything at, at address at the 4th element, right? Which would be numbers of 3. So let's go ahead and just look at sort of how these are set up. We'll do I is less than 3, and we'll do I++. I'm going to say printf %d, I'll do a \n, and numbers of I, right? So when I go ahead and compile, you see we get 1, 2, 4, right? I could also do something where I say numbers of I equals the square of I, right? And we can see what that will look like, where I get 0, 1, 4, right? So I'm going to take 0 and square it, which is, of course, 0. 1 and square it, which is 1. 2 and square it, which is 4, right? So you see I'm setting up the values in number, right? Or in numbers. So this is a very convenient way to go ahead and store a bunch of information under one name, but still access it in a convenient way like we can with variables, right? And you see that we can go ahead and loop over it, right? We can look at all of the numbers without having to store them in all of these different areas, right? Oh, which can be very annoying. If we had 10 numbers and we had to store them each in a variable, well, we wouldn't really have a good way to iterate over those using a for loop, because we would have to be, writing, all right, give me for the variable called number 0, go ahead and print it. For the variable called number 1, go ahead and print it, etc., etc. But now we just have this very nice syntactic way to represent that concept very succinctly, right? And, oops, I didn't want to comment that. So let's go ahead and say 10. I'm just going to not go ahead and set these anymore. Go ahead and delete that also. So just go ahead and, screen cap it if you want. And we'll do that, right? So this is going to give me the first 10 square numbers, right? So, and you see we get all the way up to 81, which is, of course, 9 times 9, right? So this, gives us a concept that's going to be very useful now that we want to go ahead and store multiple characters together, right? So let's go ahead and think about how we will do that. First thing, though, I do want to do something that I think will just make our lives easier. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because we don't need it in our game anymore. I want to go ahead and say that before we draw the level, I'm going to say that if player.isTyping, I'm going to say printf typing mode, like that, right? And then we'll say else we'll do normal mode. So we are in normal mode. I'm going to say that we are in typing mode, like that. Okay, nothing's working. I'm going to space, and now we are in normal mode. Okay, cool. I maybe even do a nicer thing. Like, we could change the border based on what mode you are in, which would actually be kind of nice. It would probably be aesthetically more pleasing. That way you aren't having to, look up above where you are. You can just kind of look at the map and see. So actually, yeah, I'm just going to say that right now. I'm going to say if player.isTyping, then we want to set this. We'll do asterisks for that. We'll say otherwise we are going to do, I don't know, do an equal sign. So, the asterisks are kind of, alarming, right? You see the asterisk, you're like, oh, what's going on? I do that, we're clearly in a special mode, right? Okay. And we can go ahead and keep this thing up here, just so we are indicating to our player what is going on. All right, so in the next video, we will go ahead and start looking at something that we can do with these arrays in typing mode.